the truth is that it's all on you. You know it's all on you. You know you get to choose, yeah. So what you gonna do? Because it's all on you.
Greetings, good people. It's your girl T here. Welcome to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. And today, I have someone you are going to learn a lot from because he's super smart. He is the host of his own podcast, his own shows. He does his own thing, and he lives his life on his terms. I have actually spent time on his show. We met through an amazing lady named Judy Polnick, who was in the entertainment industry for years, and she knows I don't like dumb people. So she introduced me to this man who is incredibly intelligent and patient with a lot of humans. He takes care of people that have substance abuse issues, well, all kinds of issues, but really focuses on substance abuse issues. And he's just a good guy to know. So without further ado, I want you to meet Dr. G. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Tanya. It's great to see you again. And thank you for a wonderful introduction, of course.
Well, you're a wonderful person. And what I want to do is let the people get to know you through your story. So give them a story that has impacted your life and kind of contributed to who you are now.
Absolutely. Tanya, when I was a child between the ages of 6 and 16, I suffered from a debilitating bone disease called osteomyelitis. And it basically put me in the hospital for 10 years on and off. And a lot of times I had to be isolated in a separate room because my body couldn't fight off infection. And I had to have 6 different surgeries. I had bone grafts, anything to basically keep me alive. But, during that time, there was an incident that shifted the way I looked at the world. So every time I had a surgery, I had to learn how to walk all over again. Many times I was in a body cast, and it was very difficult to actually try to feel good about myself. So I would have this physical therapy, and I was ashamed and embarrassed about how clumsy I was. I had also put on a lot of weight because I couldn't move. So here I felt like this fat kid who, to use the term, basically at that time felt crippled. So I'd go at night to try to learn the exercises that the therapist gave me, but I was so embarrassed by who I was. Like I said, I would wait at night to do it. I'd go to this staircase that was on the back of the ward, and I'd try to learn how to walk. And so many times I would feel so terrible about myself. I would stumble, I would fall, and I would be such an angry kid, and I'd hit myself and call myself all kinds of really horrible names. And then one day, it was like one time I was doing it, Tanya, it was like an epiphany. I was about to do that, and I thought, I have to stop this. I have to stop hiding in the back of a staircase and trying to be perfect and trying to be something that I could never be. I really needed to be just myself. And the next day after I had my instruction, instead of waiting to go out and, at nighttime and go learn to try to do the exercises to learn how to walk, I actually went out in the middle of the day, in the middle of the ward, in front of all these people with my crutches, and I tried to learn how to walk. And at that moment, I decided I really didn't care what people thought about me. I really didn't care if I was going to be awkward. I really didn't care about people's opinion. I was going to be my messy but authentic self. And that was so impactful for me that it really set the stage for the rest of my life, that I was not going to be a person that was going to be filled with shame. I was not going to be a person that apologized for themselves. I was going to be a person that tried to find strength and empowerment in everything I did. And you know what? Since that moment, it's influenced everything, and it's influenced what we are about to talk about being an openly gay man during this political season, who's also a psychologist, a podcast host, an author. And I try to be a good friend.
You absolutely are. Listen, I have a lot of friends who are married to psychologists, and people that are just very intuitive about the brain and how we think and how we relate to one another. They always feel like when they're having conversations with their spouses, like their spouse is analyzing them from like a doctor's point of view. So it always cracks me up. Tell me about your marriage, your relationship. And does your mate ever think you are psychoanalyzing him when you guys are doing a back and forth?
Well, all the time. So my husband is a successful writer, and he has worked in the film industry for a long time. He's a playwright, etc. But the running joke we have is he says, I want to talk to you as my partner. We've been together 29 years. We're going on 30 years together, which is even hard to think about. We've gone through ups and downs, but that's always the qualifying statement. I need to talk to you, but I need to talk to you as my husband and not as a therapist. And to be honest with you, Tanya, that's actually sometimes a really difficult thing to do. But I love it because I'll say, okay, give me 20 minutes to get out of therapist mode and get into husband mode.
Well, I'm going to need you to play both roles today. I want you to be a spouse. I want you to be a friend. I want you to be a therapist and give the people all of your knowledge when we get into the depths of this conversation. And my first question for you is that marriage is protected right now. It's legally protected, right? But we know rights can come and go in this country. And do you ever get concerned that this will come back to be something that you will have to continuously battle, especially in this political climate? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I do worry about it a lot. But I also feel that I am protected because there's always an avenue of people that feel positive about what we're doing about marriage equality. And I try to focus on that. But internally, I do feel this anxiety and fear. Both my parents were Holocaust survivors. And so I grew up with stories of people, literally being killed because of who they were and having all their rights taken away. So that was a reality growing up, even though I grew up in Canada and felt protected. My parents always said to me, you always have to stand up for who you are. You always have to fight for who you are. And don't get too complacent and don't get too accepting of a situation that it's permanent, because you know what? Nothing is permanent and anything can change.
With the way some politicians are kind of going after LGBTQ plus rights, do you ever feel like your personal life is kind of fodder for the public? Do you feel like your personal life is used kind of sometimes to score political points or for clout chasing?
Yeah, a lot of times it's very interesting being someone who is gay and being married because, basically I've told people I just sort of want to be left alone
Mm.
to be who I am, as you always say, be authentic, live my life. And then that seems to give a lot of people a lot of give them a hard time. I always feel that the best revenge to anyone who doesn't like you is to just try and have a happy life.
100%. 100%. Here's my follow-up to that though.
Sure.
It feels like, especially right now, it is used it's used for attention getting, for clicking, for clickbait, not really because it's a problem that needs to be solved. Knowing politics and how laws come to be, it's usually because someone is trying to solve a problem. But right now, it feels like ain't nobody asked for a lot of this legislation that is coming out of the blue that is making things a lot worse. I could be wrong, but
Okay.
I want you to talk to me about like, do you support all of the legislation that has come out? Do you feel like some of this stuff is really bombastic, or do you think that all of this legislation that seems to be a little divisive is exactly that? Like, is it all necessary? Or because sometimes the DEI and they come with, well, we're going to do this for Black people, and then I'm like, sometimes we just want to be left alone. Just don't get in the way.
Yeah, I think it's hard. You know what? We're, as a gay population, we're as varied and different as any other group of people. So there's a lot of things that can define us. Our sexuality or sexual orientation may be one of them, but there's a lot of other defining issues. Let's say your spiritual beliefs, your social beliefs, the causes that you believe in. So to me, it's a very individualized choice, like anything else. There's some things I feel strongly about, some things I don't necessarily feel are necessary, but I do respect the fact that there are other people out there that come from a different point of view that may feel that's they're very necessary for them to go along with what I strongly believe to reduce any kind of shame or any kind of apology in their life. So I respect that, but I'm not, to have this group think that everything is always applicable to each person isn't always appropriate. But again, I do respect and support it and let individuals decide what they want to believe in or not.
So I guess my argument is we can't legislate tolerance. There's no legislation that can be put in to society that will make people like gay people or like Black people, or you know what I'm saying? It almost feels like you put these things out to try to make everybody like each other, and it has the exact opposite impact. So what would your advice be to legislators in regards to gay rights?
I think that legislators have to be able to look at what's personally important to people and not necessarily worry so much, as we've talked about, of getting liked or not, but doing what they feel is right. And what they feel is right may not necessarily please everyone, but that's impossible. You can't please everyone. And if someone is so entrenched in their homophobia or their racism or any kind of prejudice that they have, my belief is you're not going to change them. But if you create a different model, you create a different way of looking, and you create a place where people who do feel differently can grow, prosper. And I'm going to keep repeating this during our show and not be filled with shame, because I believe actually shame literally can kill people through addiction, depression, anxiety, mental illness. And that's the template that I go by all the time is, how am I going to reduce a shameful experience?
Do you feel like we're regressing on equality, or is this just the political climate that we're in right now?
I think it goes back and forth. It depends where you're living. Being in California, I don't feel like we're regressing. I spend a lot of time in New Mexico. It's also a blue state. I don't feel like we're regressing, but I feel as though it's more divided. And that is not that unusual when someone gets stronger in their belief system. And as you said, has legislation that protects people's rights, you may also get the opposite reaction. People who feel strongly against it will also get more entrenched. So that's why we're seeing, I believe, a lot of this political climate. So with growth, there's going to be a lot of resistance and there's going to be a lot of pushback. But eventually, I want to be optimistic and feel like what's compassionate, what's empathetic towards people, whether you agree with them or not, or you understand them or not, but at least try to respect them, is going to persevere.
I love that. Tell me about your family. What are traditional values? You spoke about both of your parents, but what
Right.
are some of those traditional values that you bring into your own relationship?
I think it's respect. As I said, both my parents were Holocaust survivors. I actually grew up in Canada. And one thing they taught me was, whether you agreed with someone or not, you should really try to have respect and trying to understand that differences aren't something to be afraid of, but differences are something that we can learn from and empower ourselves. They were also very big on education. It was important to them because they said, growing up in Europe in the 30s and 40s, they could take everything away from us, all our possessions. They could put us in camps, but they couldn't take away our education and they couldn't take away our point of view. And to them, that was very important that I led an authentic life and that I saw the importance of difference, again, not as something to be afraid of, but something to be embraced.
I love that. And with the LGBTQ community and the Black community, minority communities, there's always the allies, right? We all have
Right.
allies. But I want you to tell me, or tell the public, what is the difference to you between an ally, a true ally, and someone that just, does their thing online? We love to see it online. Thank you for being supportive. But let's talk about what true allyship looks like for you.
For me, true allyship is when people step up to the plate when it's difficult.
Mm.
It's easy to just go along with the group and say, I support gay rights, etc., or any kind of minority rights or diverse rights that reflect diversity. But when it really gets tough, when people really threaten us, you start to get a sense of who is going to step up to the plate, who is going to be there for you, and who is going to be authentic. Even in the coming out process, which is interesting to me because people will say, well, you came out. And I go, oh, no, no, no. As a gay person, you spend the rest of your life coming out and making decisions as to whether you're going to be open about who you are in a moment or not. And that's always a question of trying to find who is going to be a true ally and who is not. So, it's a cliche, but when the going gets tough, you really understand who is there for you and who is not.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Have you had an experience where you have actually witnessed someone's allyship that wasn't true?
Oh, absolutely. It's less, and that's why I feel things are better. It's less as I get older, but growing up in the 90s, there were times that I lost my job. I lost a job
Mm.
because of people finding out I was gay. And, it was really tough at the time because I was a student and, I needed the money and it was important to me and I was scared. But somehow you fall down. Again, it's a cliche and it just makes you stronger. But in those moments when you fall down, it's pretty scary. I've had family members, not my immediate family, who have had a hard time with my sexuality, my sexual, I say, orientation. And it's kind of frustrating at times because it's a big part of who I am, but it's not everything about who I am. I have a lot of other strong beliefs, and it's difficult when someone decides to pick one aspect of yourself and make that into a defining moment.
It's funny you say that. As you're talking, and you said it's a big part of who you are. My family is important to me, but I've never thought about my sexuality being a big part of me. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't think about my sexuality. I think about my family, think about my husband, my mate, the person I talk to make decisions. But my sexuality does not play into decisions that I make on a regular basis. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
how did it become such a freaking issue in other people's lives? I think that's I'm where I'm going with this is why who I'm sleeping with or what kind of person I'm sleeping with. Why does that even play a role in how you live your life or policies that are created? Why is it even that important, especially for a party that is about small government? Like, what? Tell me how you feel about what
It's
I
really
just said.
it's very interesting because, to be honest, I don't walk around all day, living my life thinking I'm a gay person. I'm a gay person. I'm just living my life. I'm just doing my thing. whether it's a psychologist, author, friend, I don't know, shopping in the store. And, so many times I become aware of it. Now, again, I really feel it's gotten much more comfortable. But I remember when I was coming out, my brother asked me, he said, well, what's your biggest issue about being a gay person? And I said, it's you. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, it's as natural to me. I didn't like have a moment in my life where I sat down and said, oh, I'm a gay person. It's just what it was. And even my brother asked me, said, well, when did you realize you were gay? And I had to look at him and react to the absurdity of it. And I said, when I got the letter. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, I got a membership card and it came in the mail. And that's when I realized I was gay. And then he realized I was pulling his leg. I said, that's how silly the question is to a gay person. And so I don't think about it most of the time until somebody else makes it an issue. And I believe people make it an issue because of fear, anxiety, the fear of something different, their preconceived notions or cliches about what they project a gay person to be. I've had people, looked at people and said, don't worry, you're not going to catch it. It's not contagious. So to me, any kind of prejudice, any kind of homophobia, any kind of racism has the fundamental issue of fear and anxiety and the fear of something different. And as we said, like my parents taught me, you got to respect something different. I love diversity because it's so much more interesting, and it makes the world so much more interesting than being fear-based and being fearful of a certain group of people.
How do you, and be honest, when you're in a room or you're in a situation and you start realizing somebody's othering you, how do you deal with that?
I decide how important that person is in my life.
Mm.
If it's someone I will never see again, or I don't care about their reaction, I may decide a lot of times, like maybe in a business situation, I may decide not to say anything about who I am because it's not appropriate. But if someone asks me, I'm not going to lie. I'll just say it. But it's it's a difficult situation. If I have a moment, I'll tell you a story. I have a neighbor who is very right-wing Republican, owns a large gun store, and we walk our dogs sometimes together. And I was in New Mexico at the time, and I told him I'm going to California, and he started to say some very negative things about Newsom. And I said, well, look, I'm actually a big Newsom fan. And then he started to spout off a lot of Republican rhetoric about immigrants and the borders and all this stuff. And I stopped him, and this isn't his real name. I turned to him and I said, Tom, enough. There's one issue here. Your party wants to take away my marriage, wants to take away my rights, wants to put me back in the closet, filled with shame and self-hatred. I can't support anything you're going to say. So he said, well, you're a one issue person. I said, yeah, it's a really big issue. So to answer that question, in that moment, I felt very compelled to state my case that I just wasn't going to let him get away with it. And I wanted him to understand what was important to me.
As a therapist, you work with people that are dealing with disorder. I won't even just say drug disorder, because people find addiction and they find solace in all kinds of things. They start to overdo, right? I get really concerned about our young people. I feel like we're losing them. I feel like we're losing them to addiction, all kinds of addictions.
Right.
I know that a big part of that is just not being comfortable with who you are. So what would you tell a parent that sees change in their child in a not so positive way?
I would tell the parent, and I've dealt with this so many times, that a lot of times it's a complex issue. Look, people can be predisposed for genetic reasons, for biological reasons to addiction. And you can see that it follows in families. So we always have to take that into consideration. But there's also a lot of behavioral reasons why someone may go through addiction, or a child may be filled with depression or anxiety. I tell them, look, you got to let your child speak their truth. We got to find a way to accept it. And even if it's difficult to hear, it's what's going to free them up. And that's why I keep going back to this premise of shame kills. I've been doing this 25 years, and I see the power of shame in people's life. And the more someone can find some self acceptance and find people that support them, because, we can't live alone in this world, and find a community that supports them, and see, even as a gay person or anyone that's looking, that feels different, that there are people out there, there are institutions. Look, now you can get married as a gay person. When I was growing up, that wasn't even a thought or a concept. You can adopt children as a gay person. That was never a thought or concept for me. So to tell parents, look, people can live very happy lives if they live their truth and if they get the support they need.
So, with the rhetoric that has been spilled during this campaign, if I was a young person and
Sure.
I was trying to figure out my own identity and be comfortable in who I'm discovering that I am, I absolutely would have a hard time coming out to my parent or an administrator or anybody at this
Sure.
point. What would your advice be to that child?
Find people that can love you and accept you. I'm working with a young girl right now who comes from a very conservative religious background. Her father is actually like a minister. And when she came out to her father, he disowned her and said there's no room for her in their world, which was fascinating to me because, he talked a lot about Christian values to me, which are about love and acceptance. And yet it's not something he could find in his own heart towards his own daughter. I told her, I said, look, you can try to spend the rest of your life trying to get your father to accept you, and hopefully he'll soften up with time. Or there's a whole world out there of people that will accept you. There's churches that are gay affirming. There's other kinds of religious institutions. There's social institutions. Find the place that accepts you. And, I'm not saying it's going to be easy for her. It's going to be very tough. It's very hard to feel that the people that were supposed to give you unconditional love are so conditional. But life is tough, and you got to roll with it and find ways to make yourself happy.
So, for the people that don't know, what is gay affirming?
That being gay is something positive in your life and not something that should be a negative force in your life. So gay affirming is people that are comfortable with who you are, whether they're gay or not, or, but they're just fine about it. So they affirm the positivity of being gay.
I can appreciate that. So, are you telling me that you can't actually go to school and come home a different sex? Is that what you're telling?
No, I don't know. I don't think science has proven that.
Like, dude, where does this stuff even come from?
It's just so absurd. Like I said, like people think, well, why? Okay, let's think about it for a moment, Tanya.
Please, let's think.
It's challenging to be gay, okay? It is what it is. It's like I think it's, it is what it is. And you just go, this is my truth, and I'm going to have to turn it into a strength in my life. It's not like, you can catch it, or you got it at school, or,
You know what it reminds me of? Let me just say this. It reminds me of, I have friends, and I don't know about you, that are just, I won't even say promiscuous. They just like to have sex, right? I ain't gonna judge you. That's what you like.
Right.
So whether it's with a man or a woman, if that's what you like to do, why am I going to concern myself with it? Why would I even judge you? I have friends that like okra. I don't know. It's gross to me. It's nasty, but I'm not going to judge you because you like that nasty, slimy okra. I'm not going to judge you. I'm just trying to
Oh,
figure
wait a minute.
out
Okra,
how
we have to put our foot down around okra.
I can't listen. I'm not concerning myself so much about what you like and don't like to where do you know how hard it is to get a bill done? That is a lot of work.
I know.
So I'm going to go through all of this work to legislate your life and your lifestyle. I I'm trying to understand that and get people to understand why is it such a vitriolic feeling that you would even be willing to put in work to keep someone else from living their life.
I believe as a psychologist and as a human being that a lot of times it's easier for people to find the enemy than to go after compassion and understanding. When you're angry, it empowers you, and people want to find a scapegoat sometimes in society or with other groups of people, because ultimately they may not want to deal with their own issues, their own fears, their own anxieties. I've had people say to me, well, you represent the gay agenda. I go, okay, what exactly is the gay agenda? Because I don't know. It's so personal for each person. To me, the gay agenda is just like you said, I just want to live my life. I want to be free to love the person that I love, and to sort of do what everyone else is doing, try to have a career, friends, financial security, etc. That's all I really want in my life, and to have a rewarding career. I feel I think happiness of other people can really threaten certain people. And, they're very rigid in their thinking, and they want to see the world in black and white terms versus the truth of the world is it's all gray. It's messy. There's extremes aren't the way to look at things. And people have a hard time with complex thinking. They want simple answers to very complex issues. I feel that's a danger, and we see it right now a lot of times in our political climate. Is there's so much scapegoating, there's so much, I want to say, simplistic thinking to very complex thoughts, but it's
Mhm.
easy to be angry.
If you were in a room with the Republican nominee right now, what would you say to him?
um, okay, so that I just edited in my mind.
No, unedited. Come on, Doc.
Okay, I'm going to be truthful. This is what we're talking about.
I'm asking.
Get a life.
Get a life.
Get a life. Get a life that isn't about hurting other people, talking about fascist ideas, talking about ideas that hurt people. And what I mean by get a life is why don't you, people that are, I believe, fundamentally happy in their own skin don't want to see harm to other people because they feel happy and they want other people to be happy. And I feel like, so much of the rhetoric that's going on, we just saw this, what happened at Madison Square Garden. I can't remember the name of the comedian, but these horrible racist comments he made about African Americans, people of Puerto Rican descent, and to actually think that that was okay. To me, it's about, what about some compassion, understanding? What about, isn't that what American values are all about? I mean, to me, it's very simplistic. And so what I mean is, get a life that is about making people happy and less divisive in their thinking.
I am a parent of four.
Okay.
I would actually love it if we didn't talk about sexuality so much in schools. And I know there are people that obviously feel like the wrong things are being talked about in schools. Where do you stand on that as a therapist? Do you think this should be a conversation in school or no?
I think it depends on what age someone is. I think there are times that it's more appropriate than others. I also think that the conversation should be age appropriate, depending on where people are at. But to talk about sexuality or sexual identity, it's part of our life. It's a big part of our life. So I think it should be talked about appropriately with care and understanding and empathy. If it's something that we are just too afraid of, we're going to learn about it somewhere. So why not learn about it in more appropriate terms and learn about the complexity of it?
So I'll take that back to your conversation about your parents
Okay.
and diversity. Every family, every household, they function differently. They teach different things. Their morals and family values are different. So it's almost like I'm taking something that's very personal, because it becomes personal because of the
Right.
way that you're raised, and bringing it into a classroom where we ain't even doing that good in math and science right now. So I'm feeling like we probably have other things that we could be talking about, but outside of the basics, the science part of it. I don't know. I just think it goes a little too far these days,
Yeah,
and I'm pretty liberal, but I'm like, it's a bit much.
well, I also think that I don't know, to be completely honest, I'm not exactly sure what I'm not as plugged into what's going on in schools as far as education about sexual orientation. But at the same time, I've worked with parents that are same sex parents, and for them to be able to have their children understand who they are and to have other kids understand that perhaps their parents are different, but that different as far as there's two moms or two dads, etc. But that doesn't make it unacceptable. To be able to for kids to understand that concept, I think, is very important. So
But I think we even grew up, sometimes people act so shell shocked about things. And I'm like, I think we grew up with people having different types of families. And we didn't talk about kids getting raised by their grandparents. It didn't mean when I go over to your house and your grandmother's there cooking that I'm looking at her
right.
sideways. You know what I'm saying? Like, at some point, because we're so diverse, how much time are we spending focusing on people's personal lives in a situation where people are still trying to figure out who they are, discovering the world? And we don't even teach these kids how to think right now. We, especially in California, where we're coming to a place where they're going to start teaching media in California now, and how to process media. Like, how far do we go into people's personal lives, which then allows for them to be judgmental, because you can't just teach, you have to teach and then process. And then when you're processing in an environment where some of these teachers aren't even equipped to be able to handle some of these conversations, then it just goes off the rails. I don't know. Personally, I think some of the stuff, and not just about, sexuality, but just lifestyle, some of it, I think it's almost inviting controversy into the education system. But maybe that's political also. I don't know. Thoughts?
Yeah, my thought is, you said to me the most important word is we don't teach people how to think. We have to teach people fundamentally how to think. There's a lot of different ways of thinking, and there's creative ways of thinking. Some people are more right brain, left brain, but critical thought is so important. When I just talked to someone about this today. When I was studying to be a psychologist and we had to go for our licensing exams, I felt that it was just learning a ton of facts and then regurgitating those facts. But it wasn't teaching where I learned how to be critical in my thinking and creative and think outside the box was really in life, and actually the actual training to be a therapist. So if we fundamentally do that, and then to me, that's the most important issue, because that also brings up the ability to then look at different lifestyles, look at diversity, look at whatever, and start being inquisitive and start thinking about what it really means. I don't know the exact sort of like a litmus test. What is the exact number of hours or how much we should be doing? But anything that helps people learn how to uh, be more accepting in their thinking, understanding people on a different level, learning to have compassion and empathy towards other people. To me, those psychological components are the most important thing to be teaching. Then we can add on different content, like you said, about sexual orientation. But you have to get below the surface first before you deal with what's above the surface. if that makes sense.
What's more important to you, community or legislation?
I think community is more important, and out of that can come legislation.
I can appreciate that. Well, let the people know what's next for you, how they can be connected to you, see what's going on with you. I know you have some cool things coming up.
Sure.
So give the people all the good information, Dr. G.
Okay, well, my social media handles are just at Dr. Glass, whether it's Instagram, X, or Facebook. Right now, I'm involved in, I have a company called Daranot Health, and that's the website is Daranot, DARAKNOT, then the word health.com. And we offer concierge type of wellness and rehab programs that are individualized to people's needs. I evolved into that place because I saw a lot of times with mental health needs, we had group programming, but a lot of times we didn't meet the individual needs of people. So I've created these programs, and in Santa Fe right now, where I am, we have a Santa Fe wellness experience that is about implementing 5 different elements of wellness, which is anything from traditional healing to what's indigenous in Santa Fe, to art, to culture. These are all aspects of helping someone get well, in addition to just, creating a healthy body and a healthy spirit. So I'm working on that. My podcast is Engaging Minds, where we try to look at how people impact our lives, and people that have great stories, how they can help us create change. And involved in different seminars, etc., like that, and doing public speaking. So I tend to have my hand in a lot of different pots, but I love that because it keeps me interested and keeps me motivated. As my friend says, I have a lot of friends said, you're like Scooby-Doo. Every time you see something, you just turn around and go, oh, that's interesting.
I love that. I love that for you. So I want to thank you for
Sure.
taking the time and being here and speaking with us, because what you have to offer is insight that, some people are just afraid to ask. So I appreciate your transparency and your ability to be able to just have this conversation with me. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Tanya. And I just wanted to leave with this thought. What I've learned over the years is I tell people, shame can ultimately literally kill someone. Because if we're filled with shame, that's going to lead to mental health problems. It could lead to addiction. And it's so important for people to find ways in their life, no matter who they are, gay, straight, I don't care what they are, but to not hold on to secrets and to allow themselves to just be their authentic self as much as they possibly can.
Absolutely. Again, I want to thank you, and I want to encourage you all to stay in touch with, and
Please do.
follow Dr. G. He's amazing. He's funny and he's honest. So, that
I,
does not come a dime a dozen these days. Very rare, very rare.
I appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak my truth. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and you guys take care out there. Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What do you think about today's episode? And share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores, or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.